I'm the Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley Sr., pastor of the Abundant Joy Community Church, Jersey City, New Jersey. This press conference is being hosted by NJTogether, the Office of the Public Defender, and the American Civil Liberties Union of New Jersey. For those who don't know, NJTogether is a nonpartisan coalition of more than 50 religious congregations, mostly in northern New Jersey, excuse me. Over the summer, we held an action with 2,000 plus leaders from 250 congregations and not-profits in every county in the state. The issue we will focus on this morning was part of that action and ratified as a priority for that action. It matters to the diverse congregations up and down the state because we know we will never have a fair and just criminal justice system until we address these issues. Justice delayed is justice denied. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us of the need for urgency in addressing such matters and addressing such issues in his book, Why We Can't Wait. We will have a few key speakers this morning, but I would like to ask all those who are in attendance to please introduce yourselves in the chat. Please give us your name, your congregation or not-for-profit, and the town where you live. Thank you. Each speaker will introduce him or herself in the order we agreed upon. Let us first hear from our first speaker, the Rev. Dr. Alonzo Perry Sr., pastor of the New Hope Missionary Baptist Church.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashley. My name is Reverend Dr. Alonzo Perry Sr. I pastor New Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Jersey City, and I have been associated with Jersey City Together and New Jersey Together for about 5 or 6 years. I'm here today because this issue really matters. The issue that is before us is the issue of mandatory minimums and passing legislation to
Pastor Perry, you're muted.
Is that better? Okay, thank you. I want to thank Dr. Ashley for introducing me. I'm a pastor at New Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Jersey City. I've been a member of Jersey City Together and New Jersey Together for about 5 years now. I'm here today because I'm angered, I'm upset, I'm outraged. I want to thank Dr. Ashley for mentioning Dr. Martin Luther King and his quote about justice delayed is really justice denied. Dr. King in April of 1963 found himself in jail in Birmingham, Alabama. And one of the issues was raised to Dr. King was, why are you here? Why come to Alabama? Why come to Birmingham when there are so many other places that you could be? And he made this point, and I want to make this point to you. He said he went to Birmingham because injustice was in Birmingham. I'm on this call today because there's injustice in New Jersey. I'm here today to lift my voice and to speak up for those who are not really able to speak for themselves. A decade ago, New Jersey did the right thing. They impaneled groups, judges, attorneys, prosecutors, and started dealing with the tough work of reforming our criminal justice system. Last year, we got a report from a blue ribbon panel of some of the best minds, the best thinkers in New Jersey. And they all agreed that one of the things that we need to do is eliminate mandatory minimums. I'm really here because the mandatory minimums really affects Black people. And the reality is that I very well could have been subject to mandatory minimums. And I'm really concerned that a lot of the folk who look like me, who, because they live in urban centers, because they live in Jersey City, they live in the places that schools are within 1,000 feet of about anywhere you can walk in Jersey City, and they do things and they get caught up in the system. And I'm really puzzled about where we are. We're a state that just voted to legalize marijuana, but we won't release the people who've been caught up in this vicious system of mandatory minimums. So I'm asking today, I'm pleading with you. And as a Black man who has children and now grandchildren, I don't want to say to my children that I had to go and plead with folk to do the right thing. But I want to plead today and ask them to do whatever it takes. Let's get this bill passed. Let's push it across the finish line so that we can eliminate this scourge on New Jersey, where we lock up people who are Black and brown simply because of where they live, simply because of things that are really outside of control. So I'm hoping as a result of this call that the voices and the powers in our state would just get together and realize that this is an issue that we all agree needs to be dealt with. We may differ about how to get there, but I believe we can do it. I believe, as Dr. Martin Luther King says, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And with that, I want to introduce you to Reverend Anya Sammler-Michael, who's going to come and share with you.
Thank you, Rev.Dr. Perry. Yes, I join your ask and I join your pleading, and I wish we didn't have to be pleading, but I think you're right. Today, pleading is the right thing to do. I'm at the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Montclair. There I serve as a senior co-pastor. Our ministries and our programs serve over 1,000 families, mainly in Essex County, New Jersey. Governor Murphy, Senator Sweeney, Speaker Coughlin, we have made a commitment today to speak quickly and concisely. Why? Because we believe that time is precious. Your time, our time, these reporters' time. All we ask is that you return the favor, but not to us, to the citizens and families of New Jersey impacted by the injustice of mandatory minimum sentences. These individuals and families know the value of time. Many lost long, precious years away from their families, away from the potential of their lives because of sentences that everyone agrees are unjust. So show us that you know that time is precious. Get this done next week on December 17th, no more delays. Show us that you understand that everyone's time is precious. Governor Murphy, you shared breaking news on November 14th, 2019 over your Twitter. Today, we released our Criminal Sentencing and Disposition Commission report. Unanimous historic recommendations include repealing mandatory minimum sentences. And Senator Sweeney, referring to the legislation to legalize adult use marijuana, you said, we will finally take the needed steps to heal our criminal justice system that has long been plagued by racial disparities. So we all know Twitter is a fast way to communicate. It gets your best intentions out there super fast. Just imagine if you type something in and it took 1, 2, or 10 years for it to be broadcast. I know what I would do if it happened to me. I would completely lose faith in Twitter. Governor, Senator, Speaker, can we in New Jersey lose any more faith in our criminal justice system? a system that by a number of measures is the worst in the country? I don't think so. I don't think we can lose any more faith. And I, for one, don't want to lose faith in our state's leadership. I'd like to pass this off now to Reverend Rogers.
Thank you, Anya. I am Pastor Robert Rogers, pastor of the Church of God in Christ for All Saints in Morristown, New Jersey, and a leader with NJTogether's local chapter in Morris County. I am here today to join with my colleagues to lift up my voice like a trumpet against the pandemic of racial inequity, criminal justice, structural racism inherent in the New Jersey criminal justice system, as evidence in the unjust practice of mandatory minimum sentences. These sentences are overtly unjust because they target Black and brown people and have destroyed more lives, more hopes, dreams, years, and futures than the current COVID-19 pandemic. And as a resident and pastor in Morris County, I have witnessed the destruction, the pain, the heartache, and in the lives of Black people and their families, where in this county, a Black person is 22 times more likely to be sent to state prison than a white person. Can you believe that? 22 times. For Black people sent to state prison on drug convictions in Morris County, the disparity seems even worse. This summer, I remember watching politicians across our state and country march with protesters declaring Black Lives Matter. I kept thinking to myself, this is all well and good, but will those same politicians be there when it really counts to take action against injustice? Well, this is a time when it really counts, when action is really, really needed. Mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug and property crimes must stop. Everybody agrees, including the Nonpartisan Commission, former judges, former prosecutors, Republicans and Democrats even agree. The Nonpartisan Commission adeptly addressed the issues and articulated clearly what needs to be done. This report provided a clear roadmap to correct these unjust laws and practices. So to our governor and leaders in the state legislature, it's time now for you as leaders to reason together and get on the same page. Our state government has the power to make this long overdue change happen now. So let's do it now. Reform mandatory minimum sentences in New Jersey for nonviolent drug and property crimes before this year ends. Thank you. This time I'm going to turn it over to Al-Tariq.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Al-Tariq Witcher. I'm an organizer with NJTogether. In 2002, I was convicted of possession with intent to distribute 2.3 grams of cocaine within 500 feet of a public housing project. For those of you who don't know, that's not a lot of cocaine, particularly for someone who had a long history of substance abuse like myself. The state's expert testified that the cocaine was worth $230. And given my history and what the prosecutor was charging me with, the judge sentenced me to 15 years with a 7.5-year mandatory minimum for the cocaine. I also received 5 years with a 2.5-year mandatory minimum for possession of a weapon without a permit in a separate case. My total sentence was 20 years with a 10-year mandatory minimum for 2 nonviolent offenses. At sentencing, my attorney suggested I go reinvent myself. My attorney, John Richardson, fought for me tooth and nail to not have such a harsh mandatory minimum imposed, but it fell on deaf ears for the prosecutor. And the judge, his hands were tied. He could not sentence me to any less than what the prosecutor had argued for, the mandatory minimum prescribed. I was a model prisoner. I availed myself of every self-help rehabilitative program within the Department of Corrections. I paid for and enrolled in correspondence college courses, working towards a degree in paralegal studies while working as a paralegal in the prison law library. Over that time, and through my work as a paralegal, I got a lot of time to reflect and think on the law. Again and again, I see guys like myself with substance abuse issues who were sentenced to long prison sentences because of mandatory minimums, with no chance of early release. Most weren't threats to society. They needed help. They needed support. They needed services. And then I'd see others, some convicted of murder, others of shootings, who spent less time in prison than I did. That is utterly insane. It's not an accident that New Jersey has the most unjust prison system in the country. And it's because of laws like this that everyone agrees should be changed. So when I hear those words, justice delayed is justice denied, here's what I think about. My daughter was 3 months old when I got sentenced. I missed her first 9 birthdays. Since that time, tens of thousands of men and women like me have gone to state prison on similar charges. Tens of thousands have missed their daughters or sons' birthdays. Tens of thousands have missed weddings, funerals, and other occasions. Tens of thousands of lives hurt, some ruined because of sentencing rules that everyone agrees are unjust. Justice delayed is justice denied isn't abstract to me. I can see the men's and women's faces who are impacted. So Governor Murphy, Senator Sweeney, Speaker Coughlin, get this done. This isn't a political game. Every day there's human cost to your inaction, just like there was a human cost every day for the last 10 years while politicians sat on their hands in New Jersey. Get this done, please. And with that, I'll pass this on to Lauren Reed. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Lauren Reed, and I work with the Alliance for Higher Education in Prison. Today, I'm here to shed light on mandatory minimums in the state of New Jersey. In 2008, I committed a crime that has a mandatory minimum. I didn't know what a mandatory minimum was until my lawyer explained it to me. He said it didn't matter that I was a first-time offender or that I had served my country as a United States Marine. I would serve at least 3 years in prison. The judge wouldn't have a choice. When I was sentenced, I received more than the mandatory minimum and was given a 5-year prison sentence under the No Early Release Act, which meant I had to serve 85% of my time before I was eligible for parole. And 2.5 years of that would be in maximum security. The thing is that I didn't know a lot about sentencing practices until I went to prison. I was one of the very few white women in maximum security prison. I was there because I was convicted of a violent crime, but many other women were not. When I talked to the other women I was living with, I found out almost everyone had a mandatory minimum, and most were there for nonviolent crimes. After completing 2.5 years of my sentence, I was transferred to minimum security. When I walked into the chow hall on my first day, I was struck by the thought of, wow, this is where all the white people are. And at the time, I didn't know why that was, but I later learned that mandatory minimums and sentencing practices, particularly for nonviolent offenses, are why maximum security was full of people of color. Our politicians can take immediate steps to change these practices next week. To the legislators, Speaker Coughlin and Senator Sweeney, put a bill on Governor Murphy's desk that does this now, no more delays. And Governor Murphy, sign the bill. No more games, no more back and forth. Get this done next week for the sake of our friends and family members who are incarcerated, for the sake of their families, for the sake of our state as a whole. Pass this legislation now and make a lot of families have a truly happy holiday season. Thank you for your time, and I'd like to introduce Joe Kuroka.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Kuroka. I am the New Jersey State Public Defender. I'm also a member of the Sentencing Commission that worked on the recommendations that resulted in elimination of mandatory minimum sentences. Last fall, I spent countless hours as one of the 3 or 4 main negotiators with the Attorney General's office, the prosecutor, former Chief Justice Ports. And as disappointing and as frustrating as it's been that it's over a year since the press conference where the governor and the Senate president and the Speaker of the Assembly all came together with support for the proposals, it's really a matter of decades. We've known that these laws are discriminatory for decades. I can remember 30 years ago as a young public defender standing in a courtroom in Essex on sentencing day, client after client, young Black men from Newark, all of whom were within 1,000 feet of a school, for crimes which before this law was on the books would have sent them on probation for a year and a fine, instead going to state prison time in, time again. So it's time. These recommendations have the support of the Attorney General, the Prosecutors Association, corrections, parole. It was a unanimous recommendation made over a year ago. And let me just conclude by pointing to the single biggest culprit in this, and that's the 1,000-foot school law. which has been on the books since 1987. And we've known for decades how discriminatory it is. You cannot live in an urban center in this state without being within 1,000 feet of a school. And the penalty for that crime, even small amounts of cocaine, is a mandatory minimum of 3 years in state prison. And when we were working on this a year ago, we got data from the DOC. And at that time, 79% of the state prison inmates serving a sentence for violating the 1,000-foot school law were Black. I mean, it's bad enough that over 60% of the total prison population is African-American, but even more stark is that one law which needs to be eliminated and taken off the books. So it needs to happen. It needs to be applied retroactively so that countless state prison inmates will become eligible for parole sooner than they otherwise would. And that in and of itself would be one concrete step that we could take as a state to start reversing the racial disparities in our prison systems and make our system at least somewhat more fair than it is today. And it's an easy one to take. It's there for the asking. And so I agree with everyone here. It's time for the legislature to act, and it's time for the governor to sign the bill. Thank you. And I'd like to now turn it over to Sarah and the ACLU.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm Sarah Fajardo. I'm the policy director of the ACLU of New Jersey. And I want to thank the powerful speakers this morning. It's truly an honor to join your number. As we've heard, over a year ago, this bipartisan commission unanimously recommended that the legislature pass reforms to start to address the lack of proportionality in New Jersey's sentencing laws. We know that tough on crime stances have exploded mass incarceration, increased sentence length, and curtailed judicial discretion through this mandatory minimum sentencing scheme that we're talking about today, and have resulted in ever deepening racial disparities in the criminal legal system. As we've heard, New Jersey has the terrible distinction of having the highest prison racial disparity rate in our nation. The incarceration rate for Black people is 12 times the white incarceration rate. People of color comprise 44% of New Jersey's population, but 76.5% of its prison population. With this racial disparity, legal expertise, and well-documented research on sentencing in hand, the commission issued critical reforms, including this mandatory minimum sentencing bill, that represent a strong first step on the road to sentencing reform. The legislature took up these recommendations in the form of 6 bills, and 3, including this bill, have not passed both houses. And every day, disproportionate sentences continue to determine the future of New Jerseyans. The ACLU of New Jersey wants to thank the sponsors of these bills, Senators Poe, Gill, Scutari, Cunningham, Ruiz, and Assembly members Lopez, Carter, Spate, Reynolds, Jackson, Timberlake, Hawley, Quijano, JC, and McKnight for taking up the reins of reform. We urge the legislature to not wait another day before passing these bills. To confront mass incarceration and racial disparities that grip our state, we need change, and we need it now. And now it's my pleasure to pass the mic to Rabbi Elliott. Thank you.
So good morning. I'm Rabbi Elliott Tepperman. I'm the senior rabbi at B'nai Keshet in Montclair, Essex County, New Jersey. I've been here for 18 years. I want to just take a moment before we conclude to notice that 145 people have stepped away from whatever they were doing today to join this call because of the importance of this issue for them. So what else can we say? It is embarrassing to be a citizen in a state where all of our leaders agree that ending mandatory minimum sentencing for nonviolent crimes is just common sense. It's a way that we have within our means to dismantle racism, and then to watch those leaders fail to finish their work and make it the law. So look, we're people of faith, we're clergy, we're pretty good at speaking with kindness and a soft tone. We are in the habit of assuming the best of everyone. So just in case it isn't clear, your inaction is breaking our hearts, and we are angry and we are infuriated by this delay, and it needs to stop. Look, I know, I have faith that God sometimes works in ways that are mysterious and difficult for us humans to chart. And I am humble. I'm humble enough to know that the path to justice, it's not always a straight line. So to the politicians in our state, we are not here to tell you how to do your job, But we are here to tell you that it is unacceptable for you to not pass this bill. Think about the thousands of faces a year for whom you are denying justice. You, our leaders, those who we have elected to represent us, you have some choices to make. There is a clear and moral path, and there's also a clearly immoral one. Ending minimum sentencing for nonviolent drug and property crimes, that is the just outcome. Failing to seal the deal, that is the unjust outcome. Whatever the differences are that are in the way of getting this done, please just get past them and get past them now. If you are not getting rid of mandatory sentencing for nonviolent crimes, then you are implicated in the real and unjust harm that they are perpetuating every day they remain on the books. The real and unjust harm that they are causing to people impacted by them, people like Lauren, people like Al-Tariq. Failing to find a path to get rid of mandatory minimums by the end of the year means condemning people to racist and unjust sentencing. Our message is really simple. We keep saying it. Stop delaying justice. Stop denying justice. Get this done.